Shemai, I'm Hannah and welcome to the Purple Sector. So today we have the lovely Brit from Brit and F1 here to cover the Russian Grand Prix.
So my name's Brit and I do race reviews. I also talk a lot about the drivers, just make random videos about who I'm liking, that type of thing. Very similar to what the Purple Sector does, but I just like to voice my own opinions and thoughts. So if you haven't already, please check out my channel.
So we'll make sure to leave all her links in the description bar below. But firstly, how did you find qualifying in Russia?
So qualifying, I think, was the most exciting part of the weekend, a lot more exciting than the Grand Prix itself. So we have to talk about Q2. That's where all the drama happened. It was so exciting and quite nail-biting at one point. Lewis did, of course, his flying lap. He was pulled out over a second over Valtteri Bottas. Don't really know where he found that from, but his lap time got deleted, so put him on the back foot going into Q2. But then with 2 minutes to spare, Sebastian Vettel hit the wall, which caused a red flag. By this point, Lewis was down in P15, which was crazy, and everyone was kind of worried if he would make it out or not to do a flying lap, and with less than 2 seconds to spare, he made it across the line to get into Q3, and I don't know how he did that. Even Bono was panicking, and we never hear Bono panic.
I was kind of surprised. So when the red flag happened, I thought, oh god, they can have enough time, they'll be sorted. I thought it was quite interesting that Red Bull sent both their drivers out first, and I thought Red Bull would actually try and block Lewis more because all they had to do is slow them down a little bit, but they quite easily could have slowed the drivers up deliberately. And then I think if Lance Stroll hadn't had to go back in the box, if he'd have been in front of Lewis, I don't know whether Lewis would have made it because Lance would have backed up. Pierre massively backed everyone up. This is the one thing I hate about qualifying, is they all back each other up. They all try and do a last minute lap, and it's just like, just go and put your laps in properly earlier on. To see Lewis nervous and sweat like that, I've not seen it in a long time.
I know, I think that's why it was so exciting, and I totally agree with Lance. If Lance Stroll would have been there, I don't actually think Lewis would have made it. But yeah, it was just one of those weekends for Lewis. I felt I think a lot of pressure going into the weekend. Of course, if he would have won, he would have matched Michael Schumacher's race win record. And, you know, the curse of Netflix were there filming him. So yeah, it just wasn't a good weekend for him.
Yeah, I think this weekend for Lewis has been rather strange, especially in qualifying. Like, the fact that so many drivers kept getting caught out with that final turn and getting their lap times deleted. But normally Lewis, it doesn't faze him, he'll just go again. The fact that he used one set of tyres that he didn't initially intend to use. Mercedes seemed very kind of skittish to me. And for me, Lewis this week just seems so unsettled and so unsure with the team. Just the whole weekend, I don't think this is Lewis's kind of shining weekend when we all thought he was going to break Schumacher's record.
Yeah, it's very strange to see this from Lewis as well. Like, he's been just so dominant like these last few years, and it kind of makes you realise he is human. He does make mistakes, and it's kind of nice to see. It's a bit of breath of fresh air to have someone else win like Valtteri, but also not Lewis be as dominant.
Yeah, and I think kind of with qualifying as well, we also had the contrasting situation with the pink Mercedes, otherwise known as the Racing Points, where you had Lance Stroll obviously go out in Q2 with a technical issue. And then if you look at Sergio Perez, he qualified 4th, so he was best of the rest on a car that doesn't even have the same upgrade. So Lance Stroll, I think for the past 2 race weekends, has had upgrades. Sergio hasn't got them. He's been very critical during the week, saying that Racing Point are kind of shutting him out, which I kind of understand, is every team does it. Like when Dan was leaving Red Bull, is he wasn't allowed to be involved in the development of the following year's car. But he seemed very, very critical of the team. And then to go out there, put in a blinder and kind of leave Lance Stroll in the dust is a little bit embarrassing, I would say, for Lance Stroll, and his qualifyings are still not where they need to be.
Sergio Perez impressed me so much this weekend. I actually voted him as driver of the day because he had a really good race, but then also qualifying, put it into P4 was amazing, and as you said, he didn't have the upgrades, and he hasn't had them for a few weeks either. So to do that was so impressive, and Daniel Ricciardo has looked a lot stronger the whole weekend, so to actually beat the Renault I was really impressed with. So it was really good to see. I think, Perez is obviously fighting for a seat. There's a lot of drivers looking for a seat, and I think he definitely raised a few eyebrows this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been kind of a lot of rumours with what's going to happen with Sergio Perez, whether Alfa Romeo will take him or whether they'll take a Ferrari Junior and keep Kimi, whether Haas will take him. Or even the strangest one I keep seeing is, oh yeah, Red Bull are going to take him. And I'm thinking, the last time they took a non-Red Bull driver would have been, I think, Mark Webber and DC. Dave Coulthard, I don't think they'll take him, but it'll be sad if he's not on the grid next year because he does do amazing performances. But he had his sunshine when he was at McLaren. He didn't do as well. If he was going to get a big seat, he'd have got one years ago. He's now one of the older drivers on the grid. If you look at it, you've got the new guard of drivers coming in, and I don't see Sergio Perez having the same level of longevity that, say, for example, Lewis has had.
It is a shame because he is such a good driver, but he's always been that driver who's just been in the midfield. Yeah, he did have his time at McLaren, but some could say it was a bit too soon. But ever since then, he just hasn't put in that great performance to maybe get McLaren to re-sign him. Do you know what I mean? So it's a shame to see him go, because especially when with performances like Russia, he's still got it. He's still a good driver, but I think it might be time to bring through some of the younger drivers. We've got so many talented drivers in F2 who probably deserve the seat more than him.
So I think for me, and probably for you, probably the biggest surprise of the race, possibly for him the biggest disappointment, has to be Lewis Hamilton.
It was just such a shame. He got, I don't really know why he did that. So before the race, he started to do a practice start right at the end of the pit lane, and we have never seen anybody do that before. So I found it really strange that Mercedes okayed it. So of course everyone knew it when they saw it, that he'd get a big penalty. He got a 10-second stop-go penalty, which completely ruined his race, to be honest. And he was also on the back foot going into the race because he was on a different tyre strategy to Max and Valtteri. So definitely had his work cut out before the 10-second penalty, and I think that just completely ruined his race, to be honest. Before the race I was quite excited because it was a different tyre strategy. I was thinking maybe this could throw up a really good Russian Grand Prix for once, but he just never was able to capitalise on the gap to Max. After he did his pit stop, Max had fresher tyres near the end of the race, and Lewis just could never catch him, which I was kind of surprised about considering how dominant that Mercedes is, how quick that Mercedes is, that he just could never even get down to at least 5 seconds to Max, which was a bit disappointing because it just left us with another bit of a boring Russian Grand Prix.
Even from qualifying, Lewis had seemed a bit in disarray. I think it was a bit farcical how they did it all, to be honest, because Mercedes told him it was okay. It looks suspicious and it doesn't look right to do that at the end of the pit lane. Is you do them at the beginning of the pit lane where everyone does them. I don't see how none of them realised that wouldn't be okay. Through the whole day, he just seemed very, very antsy with the team, getting frustrated with Bono. The fact that he's like, oh, it's not in the rule book or this and that. And I'm thinking, Lewis, you've driven in the sport for over 10 years. You should kind of know by now what is and isn't okay. I find it interesting that they did it as 2 5-second penalties. They gave him 2 penalty points and then rescinded them. That I thought was silly because, to be honest, they've had all the same evidence. No new evidence came to light. Once you make a decision, unless it goes to the Court of Arbitration and there's a full-blown appeal, they shouldn't change it. But also how long it took them. It was from the moment it got announced, around 40 minutes. And to me, those situations are kind of like when drivers go over track limits. It should be a dead set rule. You do not do this. And the fact that he got so frustrated he kind of said some things like, oh, they're trying to make it interesting, this and that. And I'm like, in the past couple of races, he's got more and more penalty points. And he's getting more and more agitated with the FIA and with the team. And I've got a feeling he's gotten to, I think his first points get revoked at Turkey in 4 races' time. He's going to have to keep his head cool, because I've got a feeling if he has a similar situation, it's not going to end well.
I was kind of thinking about it today. This has kind of been starting to build up, I feel, from about Monza, because remember what happened in Monza when they told him to come into the pit and he obviously went through a red light? That again was the team's mistake, and I feel like the situation that happened in Russia was also the team's mistake. And it just doesn't seem to be a plain sailing Lewis Hamilton team at the minute. Something isn't right, I feel, at the minute. You know, it just seems all a bit aggy. Don't find Mercedes making mistakes often, and this is now twice in 3 races, so it's a bit strange.
Yeah, I think kind of the whole Mercedes seems a bit destabilised at the moment, which is quite interesting considering how dominant they are. But if you look at, say, Valtteri in the past couple of races, Valtteri seemed increasingly agitated. Lewis is now agitated. Netflix being there probably doesn't help. You look at it and there's all the rumours about what Toto's going to do, whether he's going to take a step back or whether he's going to go to Aston Martin, because the rumour is Lawrence Stroll's courting him for the team. And I think very much Lewis's future at Mercedes is tied to Toto. Toto goes, Lewis will go. And I think the fact that Toto hasn't confirmed what he's going to do yet does destabilise Lewis a little bit. And I think also with not having Nicky's presence within the team is ultimately Lewis's... If Toto goes, Lewis has lost his 2 biggest backers within the team. As much as I don't think Valtteri would beat him, I think both drivers kind of see they're not sure what Mercedes' future within the sport is or their future with them. And I think ultimately that's playing on their psyche and it's influencing the team, and it's leading to mistakes like this because, as you said, Mercedes don't make mistakes very often. But when they've done it these past couple of weeks, it's had a real detrimental impact on the drivers. But I think for me is if Mercedes weren't keeping Lewis, or Lewis left, or Valtteri left, say, in the following year, they've definitely got a bright star amongst their ranks in George Russell, because for me, his battle, him, Lando Norris, Alex Albon, was just one of the best moments of the whole race.
I don't even care that they were like fighting over P18 or something. It was just amazing to see. It was such a good battle, and George actually held his own considering how slow the Williams is compared to the Red Bull and McLaren. He was really challenging the McLaren and Red Bull. They couldn't get past him at one stage. I think they only got past him because George did that lock-up or something, which ruined his tyres. But yeah, that was such a good battle, and I can't wait for George to be in that Mercedes so they can actually battle all the time together.
I like George. I've been a little bit critical of him because I think sometimes last year, as much as he has a year's experience on the grid, he was in a back marker, virtually racing Kubica and nobody else. I think sometimes you could sense the level of inexperience he had in kind of dueling in a Formula One car. But then he held his own. I was very proud of him, and I think the way the 3 of them gave each other space, acting opposite to what you'd expect the younger drivers to be a little bit maybe closer to the edge, a bit less respectful of each other. Like if you look at, say, Kimi on Alex Albon, I think in Silverstone, Kimi gave them the space, whereas drivers a lot older and a lot more experienced than they are have failed to leave us the space.
I think that's what I was so impressed with, because they're not rookies anymore, but they're only in their 2nd season of Formula One, and you wouldn't expect that clean, mature driving from them. But I think because they have obviously all grown up with each other, they have that respect, and that's what's so good to see, because I sometimes watch young drivers and I get nervous because I'm like, oh my god, like you're going to crash into each other.
I think it was very interesting as well kind of later on when you had Lando Norris battling with Alex Albon and with Pierre Gasly on much older tyres. If only Lando's tyres had held out, I think he ended up boxing on lap 47. And I was like, I feel so bad because he finished 15th. But to be honest, for that performance, he deserved to be in the points. He was doing so well. the fact that he boxed, I think it was on the first or second lap, those kind of drivers, if you look at the contrast between Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly, George Russell, Lando Norris, and you look at, say, Charles Leclerc catching Lance Stroll and taking him out, and then you have Max Verstappen, is, I think, you've got a very, very strong cohort of young drivers. I'm sorry, but I'm not adding Esteban Ocon to that list.
I wasn't impressed with Esteban this weekend, let's put it that way.
That's the thing, if you look at that cohort of young drivers, you've ultimately got very promising talents in very different ways. You've got some more defensive drivers, you've got some more attacking drivers, you've got more strategic ones that are good with tyre management. And ultimately, I think, is when Lewis eventually retires and Sebastian eventually retires, I give it maybe 3 years before they both go, is the future of Formula One looks extremely bright with those lot at the helm.
I am so excited for the future of Formula One. You know, we have been greeted with a lot of dominance from Lewis Hamilton. Complete respect to him, what he has done to the sport is an amazing achievement. I'm so excited to see all of them drivers fighting for a world championship, because in my eyes they're all worthy of winning a world championship. It's just obviously getting the car behind them. They're all just so talented, and yeah, it's great to see.
Me, now looking on to the next race, head to Germany for the Eiffel Grand Prix. Kind of looking forward to the next race. Who do you see in terms of like predictions? Like, who do you reckon will get on pole, and who do you reckon will end up being the top 3 in the race?
Obviously, I don't know if you've seen the weather forecast, but it is looking very cold and very wet. So I'm hoping, I'm obviously going to throw the rain prediction in. I'm hoping it rains to spice things up a bit. But I don't really know where to put everyone, because I haven't seen any drivers or even modern day Formula One cars go around the Nürburgring, I can't even pronounce it, the Nürburgring, for quite a while. So I think Lewis is going to be dominant, to be honest. I think he's going to come back with a vengeance. He's going to want to prove a point for how bad his weekend went, to be fair. Maybe going to go Bottas for second, because, you know, he's just there or thereabouts. But I'm actually going to say Daniel Ricciardo for a podium. I really want Daniel to get a podium this year. I think he definitely deserves it. He's been driving so well, but also the Renault is just looking so strong at the minute. It was looking so quick in Russia, so I think they could be strong there.
When you said Daniel for the podium, I was like, we're thinking on the same wavelength here, because for me, Daniel's an incredibly strong driver in the wet. I think have Lewis will probably get pole position. He will dominate. I don't think we're going to see a repeat of Germany 2018 where they went off. I think Red Bull have got to have one weekend where they are just flying. It's going to happen at some point this year. We haven't got places like Singapore on the calendar, so I'm going to say Red Bull are going to win. I'm going to say Lewis second. I'm going to say Daniel Ricciardo third. I think the Renaults do seem a lot stronger than they have done in previous years. I feel like now, just for tradition, every week I've said it and it's still not happened, but can George Russell just score a point?
Oh gosh, that is all I want for 2020. He deserves it. He's had a great year. His qualifying has just been phenomenal, but it's just such a shame when it gets to the race, because all that hard work he does on a Saturday just gets completely thrown out the window, and it's such a shame. So yeah, come on George, we need the points.
Keeping our fingers crossed for George, but that's all we've got time for today. So Brit, it's been a pleasure to have you on the channel. I'll leave all her links in the description bar below, but I've been Hannah, that's Brit, Horvar, and goodbye.
Bye.